On this episode of the Ask Mike Reynolds Show, we talk about how we use open kinetic chain knee extension after ACL reconstruction.
The Ask Mike Reynolds Show. Helping people feel better, move better, and perform better.
Before we get to the podcast, I wanted to make sure you knew about my free online course on the Introduction to Performance Therapy and Training. If you want to learn how to get started optimizing and enhancing performance, this is the course for you. Head to mikereynolds.com/performance to sign up today. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of the Ask Mike Reynolds Show. We are here at Champion PT and Performance up in Boston, Massachusetts, answering your questions. If you have anything you want to ask for us on a future podcast episode, be sure to go to mikereynolds.com and click on that podcast link, and you can fill out the form, ask away, anything you guys want to talk about. Let me see, what do we got today? We have a special episode, right? I think this is a special episode, Len.
It's very special.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah. Mike Scaduto is at a different, no, just kidding. We have a new physical therapist that has joined us that many of you may remember. Any of our long time listeners, first time callers may remember Kevin Coughlin, a student of ours from 2 years ago, Kev? 3?
Yeah.
3 years ago. He's already lagging. Wow. We got to upgrade his computer. Is that a Chromebook you're using right now?
I think he's stuck, or he is like literally.
He's filming on a potato.
What a great entry to the pocket. He froze. Can you even hear us, Kevin?
I can now.
That is amazing.
That's so worldly presence. He froze Zoom.
All right. So Lenny, you talk to Human Resources. Let's get him off his AOL account and try to get him upgraded onto some high-speed internet. But anyway, Kevin Coughlin joins us for the first episode. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
It's gonna be a good one. But yeah, another therapist. Again, I mean, there's many more people we have at Champion. Just a lot of people just don't like, being on camera and doing this in public. But it's good to have a nice group. I think we've maxed out at 9 now. I don't think we can do any more because we've filled up the squares on Zoom. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to figure it out. But Lenny, who do we have for students today?
Students, we have in the foreground showing off his handlebar mustache, Zach Leal from NYU, New York University, the beautiful city of New York. Just to the left of him will be Chris Afonso, deep in the background. He is from Clarkson University. And we we have Ben Benjamin. I played minor league baseball from the University of Kentucky. Ben Fisher.
How many students of ours played minor league baseball?
I think he always tells us he's the only one.
How many students caught bullpens in the offseason in full gear, though?
That's actually a good point.
I think that was only one.
Fun fact, Mike Scaduto went out and bought a set of catcher's gear during his clinical here.
Yeah.
fun fact. All right, what do we, Ben, you, or who's doing it? Zach? Yep. Sorry, Zach. Sorry. I should have seen. Zach got his mustache all ready for this episode. So take it away, man. This is your time to shine.
So Dave from Instagram asks, I always enjoy your online content and appreciate your approach to PT. I was wondering if I could ask you a question that has come up with my staff. Do you incorporate open chain knee extension exercises with your ACL patients, and when do you start? When do you start to load an open chain knee extension exercise? Any parameters you incorporate?
Awesome. Good stuff, Zach. So Dave, great question. I was really excited about this question because I think Dave nailed it. So I think what's happening, just like everything else, there's a lot of buzz online about this. And I think, as we get to a culture of social media where everybody just likes to debate things all the time, I think we always just hear like bits and pieces of this. But I think what's really happening now is we had 2 great pieces to the literature in the last, not even 12 months. There was a commentary from Lynn Snyder Mackler in, I believe it was JOSPT the end of last year, that talked about using open kinetic chain knee extension after ACL reconstruction and saying that we need to do it. And her big thing was it's safe, it's effective, and it's something that we must do in order to get strength back. I think what it was missing, though, like Dave kind of kind of says there's any like guidelines. And I think a lot of people could take that the wrong way, right? Like where you can just say, wow, like Lynn Snyder-Macklin, I mean, she's prolific with ACL research. She's so smart. She's great. She's saying we need to go crazy. We need to go heavy open kinetic chain knee extension. But I just, it was like too broad. So Kevin Wilk just recently in the International Journal of Sports Physical Therapy just kind of published another one, said he kind of agrees with Lynn, but that we have to be careful. We just can't blindly go and blasting away with open kinetic knee extension. So, but again, I don't think Kevin's paper had parameters either. So let's talk about that. So I don't know who wants to start this one off about, do we obviously the question is, do we do open kinetic chain knee extension exercises? And then let's try to establish in this episode, maybe the parameters that we use at Champion, which are very research-based, but who wants to start it off?
I mean, I will, because I tend to get into the heat of battle on social media with these. And I think people really take a black and white approach to these. They either I don't do that because the doctor says I can't, or I've been taught I shouldn't because school. I definitely have evolved the past, 5-10 years in my thoughts, because I've tried to dive into the literature and see if there's anything obvious in anterior tibial translation, which is always the argument that you put extra stress on the ACL by going that 30 to 0 range of motion. I really am struggling to find something concrete to really pull me back. That doesn't mean I'm being aggressive and doing 50-pound knee extensions 2 weeks after surgery. So in my head, I tend to get a couple weeks out of surgery and let things heal down. And then I, especially that anterior knee, I'll do some isometrics. I talked to Eric Miera about this. He talks about this a lot, doing some isometrics to let the anterior knee kind of get accustomed to a stress on it. And then I like to do some just open chain knee extensions, meaning, sit at the edge of the table. If they have the range of motion, usually 2 weeks out, they have 90 degrees. So that's when I feel comfortable doing it. I'm certainly not going to force it if they're still struggling with range of motion. So range of motion is a checkbox too, right? Swelling's coming down, range of motion, pain is down. I'll initiate it with maybe active motion, maybe light ankle weight, and then I'll progress from there. But if I remember from Kevin's articles and just talking to people in general, you got to watch the graft too, right? A patella tendon graft versus a hamstring graft is going to be very different in how I treat them. Hamstring grafts, I go a little bit less aggressively because it's a soft tissue graft and there's not a bone interface attaching to the femur or the tibia. So I don't want to stretch out the hamstring by putting a little extra stress through it. Patella tendon and a quad tendon, I'll probably be a little bit more aggressive than a hamstring. And for a cadaver, which I very rarely see, I tend to just kind of shy away for a while and maybe even wait 6 weeks because I just don't trust cadavers in general, maybe wait 12 weeks. But I don't know if that is.
Yeah, I mean, and heck, even you just bringing up the different graphs, I think is something that's missing. I mean, if you just take Lynn's paper just in and of itself, it's like, do a lot of open knee extension and do it heavy and do it with everybody, right? Like, it was almost like that, we're crazy if we're not doing that. And then Kevin was almost like trying to give a little bit more parameters that, as you start getting to terminal knee extension, you put tremendous amount of strain on the patellofemoral joint, if you just had a patellar tendon graft, right? Or even any strain in the ACL. It comes down to like, doesn't matter type thing. So I think it's very clear. One quick question I have for Dwesh, and we don't have to get into this a little bit here, but Dewey, I forgot to introduce everybody, by the way. I just totally remember that. But anyway, Dewey, how many people in our gym do open kinetic chain knee extension for quad strengthening?
None, because we don't have a viable way to load it super heavy.
Okay, so
I get the question though, right? I think like, is it a necessary exercise, at least from like the performance realm? Probably not. Is it a potential, exercise that we can use? We're trying to target a little bit more like quad hypertrophy and like isolate quads a little bit more. Sure, yeah, great option.
Right. It's, I think it's a great option too. Right. But there are so many ways to get quad strengthening that, I think that's a big part of it that like we all do it. So let's try to set some parameters, right? And let's get everybody, we'll have a Champion consensus statement. Poof, let's get this published, right? Consensus statement here. So first consensus here. Do we all use open kinetic chain knee extension after ACL reconstruction? All in favor?
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. So we all agree you can use open kinetic chain knee extension. When should you start? Lenny, would you like to propose 2 weeks once they have 90 degrees of knee flexion?
I think good range of motion, minimal pain, incisions are healing. Again, graft choice is going to play into at least in my head. I'm a big patella tendon guy, so but I see a lot of hamstrings because that's what they do in Boston. So, but I think that's all I think 2 weeks probably at the earliest, just to let things kind of calm down and not stress that anterior knee. And like you mentioned, the just self-femoral joint stresses.
All right. So we'll say, we start somewhere, 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks if we're trying to go a little slower on somebody else. Right. But we'll say we start 2 weeks. All in favor?
Yeah. Yay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we start at 2 weeks. Should we start at 90 to 40? Should we stop at 40? I'm going to start and say yes. Does anybody want to say we should immediately start going to 0?
I would say we can start it there and just see how the knee responds. And especially if you're going to do it earlier and you want to test things out. Yes. If you want to buy time, that earlier time and do it, I say yes.
So you get some benefit of open Canadian chain knee extension, but we're minimizing strain, right? Yeah, as the graft is starting to, become vulnerable, a little bit more vulnerable.
And that last 30 degrees of closed chain or open chain, that 30 to 0, 40 to 0 is when, again, the most stress is on the patellofemoral joint.
Right. So most stress on the ACL, most stress on the patellofemoral joint, probably most stress on the tendon too, as we kind of get to that point. So, lots of things. So we'll start 90, 40. Do we start loading open Canadian chain knee extension, right? We definitely want to load it, right? So we do a progressive resistance thing. When do you start going all the way to 0?
6 to 8 weeks, probably.
On average, right? But what if somebody's at 4 weeks and they have full range of motion, no pain, they can do it easily, lock out that knee? Would you start it with no weight?
Yeah, probably no weight. I do.
So you want to start it with no weight. So maybe you're doing 90, 40 with resistance, but then you're doing it all the way up to 0 with no weight.
Because this person's probably also doing if they can weight bear, they're probably doing 0 to 45 closed chain. So they've experienced.
Definitely. Right. Definitely. Yeah, no, I totally agree that they're going to get quad strengthening and they're going to get terminal knee extension in other ways too. But right. So it sounds like we start 90, 40. We'll start loading 90, 40, and then we'll open up the window to 0 with no load initially, and then slowly load it. Right.
Right.
Does anybody think we should be doing like max effort open Canadian chain knee extension all the way fully straight, like on a machine, for example, like that we don't even have at Champion? Is that, you know what I mean? Like that is good, but I think that was one of the big things in Kevin's article. He suggested that we should avoid that for 6 to 9 months. Early, so aggressive. That's aggressive though, Len. I see your face. Open Canadian chain knee extension all the way to 0.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you on a machine, like as heavy as you can. And to me, I think that was the direct statement that Lynn's article didn't have there, was that, like, I think what he's saying is like, yeah, go crazy loading it 90 to 40, load it up to 0, but don't load it aggressively for 6 to 9 months.
Well, I mean, the only thing that I don't agree with that, I guess there's a lot, is I know in Birmingham and in other places and in our facility, well, we don't have it, but a Biodex is done 3 months out of surgery to test quad and hamstring strength. That's a max effort, open chain, full range of motion.
But I think there's a difference between doing it once versus doing it daily or 3 times a week.
Maybe. I mean,
I know what you're saying.
I just don't know why for 6 to 9 months we can't do it. Like where in the literature is this? What is the study? I don't.
I mean, you're never, ever, ever, ever going to have a study that tells you that.
Probably not. I just don't know where it initially came from. Like, what's the thought? What the anterior tibial translation, and like, where is that from? Right, so, I'm missing it. There's something out there, like probably from the 80s, early 90s.
This is what Kevin put in his paper, but you have unopposed anterior tibial strain because the hamstrings are not involved in open kinetic chain knee extension. So you have unopposed anterior strain. You have a dramatic increase in patellofemoral stress as you get going there. And it's a lot harder in there, at that terminal knee range of motion. I think those are his two big things. He's not saying don't do open kinetic chain knee extension with weight. He's saying don't try to max out on it for 6 to 9 months. I kind of like this point, right? I like these two papers together, right? Because I think, Lynn's like trying to say like, we shouldn't be afraid of this. And I completely agree with that. I think she did a great job with her paper. And I like how Kevin's saying you can't say, I think what Kevin's trying to say is you can't say that to students and early career professionals because they're going to go bananas. They're going to take that too far. And he's trying to say, whoa, there are some parameters in it. So, so I guess that's the only thing. Anybody else want to jump in on max effort loading with open kinetic chain knee extension? When do we get to that? Dan?
I was just going to say, it's whoever does a 3-rep max knee extension, like when does that ever happen? It seems kind of ridiculous to me.
That's a good
point.
I
think it's kind of challenging to say heavy. What the heck does that mean? If I'm doing sets of 10, am I ever loading heavy enough, even if I am going to failure? I guess, like you said, I don't think we'll ever know, but I just don't know when in a training program you'd be doing, under, let's say, 5 repetitions in a knee extension. Just don't think that's where I'd want to get the majority of my strength from.
Right.
That's actually a very solid point. But again, and this isn't a knock towards Lynn's paper, but there's no guidance with that. And she was just saying we need to do it and we need to do it heavy. Like, and it, you know what I mean? Like so Dan, you think that's common sense. I think a lot of us think that's common sense, but I wonder if not everybody has the experience you have with that you realize how you would do that. So, and I think that was Kevin's kind of point, was kind of go easy, but what's up? Yeah, I mean, I look, I don't know the answer too, but I like what we do. I mean, I think we do moderate strength training all the way to 0 with our open kinetic chain knee extension, but the majority of the strength we're getting is probably not knee extension, right? Again, we don't even have a machine at Champion. So, I mean, we're doing it with ankle weights. So that tells you, I mean, I think we have good outcomes, right? I don't know. But, so I don't know. So, all right. I still feel like we need to nail that though. Like, what do you want to propose, Lenny, on how heavy can you go on knee extension, and when are you fully cleared to do whatever you want?
I think what Dan said was going to be my next one, was just, can they do 8 to 10 reps and get a good burn? And at the end of that 10th rep, are they feeling a good burn in their muscle that they can't do an 11th rep or 12th rep? And that's to me a good parameter of 2-3 sets of that somewhere in their program, but they're also squatting and deadlifting and lunging and everything else. So people don't think we're just talking about open chain stuff. Like that's what we get. It's built into the program to isolate the quads, but then we also get the quads and other exercises. Just don't want to make sure people understand that.
Right. And this is an excellent use of like something like blood flow restriction, where again, we can do an exercise with less load because we're, trying to protect stuff. So, I think Lynn's paper was excellent because it's trying to tell people we can't be afraid of open kinetic chain. It's not unsafe. It's not less functional, right? Because quad strength is functional. So she made great points. I think Kevin's paper actually had excellent points too, where it was like, yes, but you have to be smart with how you're prescribing that. So let me try to summarize. So yes, on open kinetic knee extension, we usually start about week 2, just to let the knee heal down, let the incision heal a little bit, make sure they can get about 90 degrees of knee flexion. That makes sense. We'll start 90 to 40 for a little bit, maybe like a couple of weeks or so, just to kind of get things going, but then we'll open it up to 0. We'll start loading 90 to 40. Right. And then, and kind of keep the load 90 to 40 initially, but then slowly start opening up that window. So I'd say by probably week 12, maybe 3 months out or so, they're probably doing like, whatever you can do with ankle weight type things with open kinetic chain knee extension all the way up to 0 pretty easily. Probably from month 3 to maybe month 6, to kind of use Kevin's things, we slowly increase the load on that if you want, but we're probably avoiding max until we have, full graft, healing and everything, right? Like a max effort open kinetic chain knee extension, which I don't think I think Dan's point is we don't need that anyway, right? And Dewesh said that we don't need that, so, to Lynn's point, yes, we need open kinetic chain knee extension, but there's other things that we can more safely do with aggressive weight, right? Like where you have co-contraction of the hamstring. So you're doing it in a closed chain fashion where it's a little bit more safe. So, I I don't know. What do we think? Is that good? Anybody? Did we miss anything?
The only thing that I was going to leave off with was like, at least from like the performance end of things, right? When we started thinking about like, because the point about max effort was the one that I was really like stuck on, and I 100% agree with Dan. Like, we wouldn't load up like a max effort bicep curl or like a tricep extension for a set of 3, right? We don't have like strength testing parameters for 3 RM bicep curl or tricep extensions. So it's just like the time and place to like load max effort with the right exercise choice. Like, you could probably take your ACL patients and take them to like sets of 3, sets of 5 on squats, really test force progression for the lower body, right? Because eventually they got to get back to sport and all that stuff. But yeah, like a super, super heavy max effort knee extension just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
It's like risk reward. What kind of information are you getting with a 3 rep max versus like an 8 to 10 rep max? Is it really worth it to do that?
Right. Yeah. So, and again, I think you guys, that's the same thing. I think that was maybe Kevin's point with Lynn's art. I haven't talked to Kevin about this, by the way, but just assuming from reading it, but like, I think that was his point, was that, you know, like, look, you know, we have to be careful. I personally, as an educator, right, we all educate online. I am more and more cautious of what I put out there, because you have no idea how a young clinician is going to take it. Right. So you have to be like very careful. You know, I'm not kidding. You're going to see some people on Instagram go bananas with knee extension. They'll be like, they'll hook up like a chain to like a VW bug and like try to do knee extensions and move the car. You know what I mean? Like, that's, somebody's going to do that on Instagram, and they're going to say like, well, you know, I read this paper that said to do it. Right. So, you know, you got to be careful. So anyway, awesome. All right. Great episode. That was a good one. I like it. We went a little over, but that's good. But it was worth it. That was a good one. If you have more great questions like that, hopefully we can shed some light, maybe a little bit, you know, share our practical experience with what's out in the research. I think that's kind of why people like listen to this podcast. But thanks again. Really appreciate it, Dave. Thanks for the great question. Again, if you have another question like that, please head to MikeReinold.com, click on that podcast link, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much.